All right, there we go. Hello, folks. Hope everybody is doing well today. My name is Joe Van Allen. My title is the Assistant Director of Career and Professional Development with the College of Natural Sciences. I work inside of the Career and Professional Development Center, doing a bunch of different things, helping students with questions about resumes, cover letters, and any career questions they might have. Sometimes I go into classrooms. You might have seen me during one of those, but today I'm taking one of our more attended functions and having a workshop. We're going to be talking about what I have termed internship hunting. So I use this phrase very specifically, and we're going to go into it during the course of the presentation. But I think a lot of times people have misconceptions about internships and what their own role is going to be in finding an experience that will work well with them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what internships are and then go into the process of finding and obtaining them. I find that there are people who have a lot of mixed expectations as to what this process is going to be like, or a lot of people who have no idea what it's going to be like. And it's kind of getting to them completely new and different. So we're going to be starting sort of from the basics and then building our way up to how you can be an effective internship finder, hunter, obtainer, and all of those wonderful things. So I always share, if you've attended any of the previous presentations, you have already seen that I've used this slide before. This is just a website indicating our career platform, something that's called Handshake. It's going to be a useful tool for you in hunting down your internships. So in addition to being able to make an appointment, it is also a job and internship search engine. So if you're going to be looking in different places for internships, Handshake is going to probably be on the list of places that you're going to do a part of this exploration on. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to find internships. And when we're talking about internships, I feel like it might be helpful for you to understand why these things are important. Oftentimes we get this word where it's like, okay, there's this thing, it's called an internship, and I know I'm supposed to do it. I don't know why, and I don't even necessarily know how, but I know that it's important. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of the rationalization as to why this is important. So this is a little bit, this is some old data, but the background behind it and the influence behind it still holds up pretty well. And employers, when this data set was being created, they were asked whether or not where they put their primary focus. Do they put their focus when they're evaluating candidates on the candidate's work experience, or do they put it on the people's academics? And it's always a mix. They always care about both things. But if you ask which one that they tend to prefer a little bit more, time and time again, employers put a preference in experience and you having practical skills related to your field of study. Your academics are absolutely essential. In fact, they're foundational in helping you be able to do what you're going to do. But for a lot of people who are in the working world, they want to see that you've been able to execute on whatever your experience, your knowledge base is. And even one internship over the course of one semester can really positively influence what an employer thinks about your candidacy. I used to be a recruiter and I started recruiting in my early to mid 20s. And one of the big takeaways is that I had a big drive for supporting college students and trying to get them from the college into the working world. As a recruiter, I had a little bit of influence as to how I could maybe make that sales pitch to a hiring manager as to why somebody would be a good candidate. But that sales pitch was always so much easier if the person had done practical experiences where they could demonstrate their knowledge base. Didn't even necessarily have to be something directly related to your field, but the more related to your field it is, the closer we're getting to that internship sort of conversation and the stronger you're going to be able to sell yourself. So let's define some basic terms before we move on to the actual process. So let's start off by talking about what an actual internship is. So for those of you who have just heard this word and know that it's important, an internship is functionally any professional experience you engage in while you are a college student. That is basically the definition that we're looking for here. So we've got those two components. We have professional experience, and I'll define a little bit what that means as well. It's just experience really related to your field of study. So we have professional experience, and it's something that you typically do while you are a college student. There are some internships that are available for people prior to them going to college, some things that you could do when you're in high school. And there are some internship programs that may be run the summer after your senior year. But for the most part, Any internship we're talking about is a professional experience that happens when you're in college. Now, there's a lot of things that fall underneath this umbrella. There's often times where I'll have a student who will come to my office and say, I've got 2 semesters worth of research, but I really need to get an internship. And their field of study is going to be taking them into a research setting. The research that you've done in a lab absolutely is a professional experience you're engaging in when you're in college. So I want you to widen the umbrella as to what you think an internship might be. A lot of times I think we have this one very narrow thing that maybe you think you can only apply to a couple of, but internships are actually a very broad thing. Now, they come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. So I broke it down into 4 common places where I think people get a little bit confused. Internships can be both paid or unpaid experiences. Obviously, most of us are going to be looking for a paid experience. That would be the ideal, but unpaid experiences are a possibility as well. Now, I don't know if you should constantly go for unpaid experiences, but most internships only last a little bit of a week. Maybe they're like 10 hours a week over the course of 3 months or something like that. So a lot of people can work 2 jobs at once and balance those things out. Typically, if you're going to take on an unpaid experience, you should be getting a pretty advanced level of knowledge from that. So the next opportunity you take on can hopefully be paid. There are also scholarship programs that exist. If you look up academic works or check in your department's website, they might be able to highlight to you some opportunities where you could get scholarships that would supplement an unpaid internship, so you could still receive some kind of funding. Internships can also be credited or non-credited experiences. So what I mean by that is that you can get course credit for an internship. A lot of times when people think of internships, they typically think of something that they're doing for credit. But if you have really specific classes that you want to take and you're worried about trying to fit in a credited internship inside of that, you can do these experiences uncredited as well. A lot of people tend to do that over the course of the summer. The advantage of it being a credited experience is that you can have it count towards your coursework. So potentially you could take on an internship experience and lighten your course load. And it would also end up on your transcript, which depending on what you want to do, might be something that would be good to highlight as well. But you absolutely have the option from a professional standpoint of doing it credited or non-credited. We also hear the term internship and co-op used fairly interchangeably, and they are very different. So an internship is typically a part-time experience you engage in while you are enrolled as a college student. I mentioned this whole that they work out to being about 8 to 10 hours a week usually. So it's usually about 120 hours over a semester if you're doing what would equate to about a 3-credit internship. But that works out to being about 8 to 10 hours during the course of a week. A co-op tends to be much more involved. It might be just during the course of a semester, like a 3 or 4 month window, but typically you're working it as a full-time job. And as a result, you are not usually taking classes while you are also doing a co-op experience. So they're both internships. Co-ops just tend to be a little bit more involved, quite a bit more involved. UMass has a setup though, where you don't get unenrolled as a student while you're doing a co-op. You can file for a co-op experience, and then it'll be noted that you are taking the semester to focus on your co-op instead of your coursework. Internship versus co-op. And then finally, an internship versus a job. If you get a job that is related to your field of study over the summer, that can absolutely count as an internship. That is something that can count. The label of job versus internship doesn't really matter a lot when we're talking about professional experiences. If you're getting professional experience and it's happening while you're in college, it falls underneath the umbrella of internship, but it can also be a job. They are not mutually exclusive. The other thing I often hear people talk about when they're looking for internships is that they're like, I can't get an internship because I don't have experience. I want to peel that Band-Aid off right now. The whole point of an internship is for you to get experience. Most people who go out and get internships, they'll do it during the course of their sophomore or junior year, and sometimes into your senior year as well. But the entire point of an internship is to take somebody who doesn't have professional experience in their field yet and get that professional experience. Most internships are what we call entry-level positions. So they don't really have an expectation that you're going to have 3 or 5 years of experience. They're expecting you to be a college student. They're expecting you to have taken classes. Sometimes for really specific programs, like if you are in the concentration for actuarial science for mathematics, they will have an expectation that maybe you've taken some other requirements in order to be able to do that experience. But for the most part, these are entry-level things. You don't need to come in with a lot of experience. You need to come in with your knowledge and a desire to learn on the job. That's it. So, I also want to define why I call this presentation Hunting for Internships. I think we talk a lot about internship searching and trying to find something, but I think that kind of hides how challenging it can be to get an internship. Everybody who's on this call right now, you have access to be able to get an internship. You can find an experience that will work for you, but almost everything else in your academic career has more or less been set up for you. Then you go to pick up your classes, you meet with an advisor and they tell you these are the recommended classes and you sign off on it. And maybe you go and push yourself a little bit more and like get to pick some electives or what have you. But for the most part, these processes have been very much facilitated by other people. But most of you are in programs where doing an internship is not a requirement. And so you're not going to have people show up and tell you what to do. You're going to have to take ownership in this process, which means you're going to have to do a bit of work. A lot of times we say that job searching and internship searching and job searching are very similar, but we say job searching is like having a part-time job. And you should think about that when you're thinking about going out for an internship. If you sit there and you only apply for one experience over the semester and wonder why you didn't hear back from people, you have a misconception as to how much work it's going to take to get applications out there and get noticed. I'll frequently be asked the question, how many applications should you submit? And there is no hard and fast number out there, but I can tell you that a student that submits 100 applications in a semester is definitely going to have a better chance of getting experience than the person who only submitted 5. If you need a figure, and there is no science backing this up, but I can give you a little bit of practicality on it, I usually recommend that people apply to 3 to 10 internships every week until they land an experience that works for them. Which means if you're applying to 3 to 10 a week and you don't get something for the summer, that's cool. Keep applying for the summer, try to get something for the fall. Keep going through the fall, try to get something for the spring. But you're going to have to put in that level of work. So I give that range 3 to 10 because it will show you the level of impact that people are expecting you to have on the application circuit. If you figure a semester has about 15 weeks in it, if you were to only apply for one internship a week, you would have 15 applications out there. Now, there's a chance that one of those internships is going to work out for you and you're going to get that experience. But from what I have seen, your odds are a little too low for comfort in my realm. If you were to just change that up to 2 more applications each week to go from 1 to 3, that means instead of having 15 jobs you applied for, 15 internships you applied for at the end of the semester, you have 45. It's 3 times bigger. It is a significantly larger number, and it will have a bit more of an impact. If we bring that over to the opposite end of that range, that 10, at the end of a semester, you'd have 150 applications out there. There are still no guarantees. A lot of this depends on the kind of experiences you're applying for and how competitive they are, but that's making a really good foothold in trying to get your applications out there. I tend to find that people who are doing more than 10 a week probably aren't putting the quality into their applications that they need in order to stand out. Because while quantity is a part of the game here, quality cannot be denied. You have to keep the quality of your applications up there as well. So 3 to 10 tends to be that figure, but there's a lot of flexibility. I will also say I would far, far, far rather you apply to 5 experiences each week than 20 experiences once a month. The logic here is that internships and jobs get posted and people are looking to fill them relatively quickly. If you're only checking in once a month, you are missing out on a whole host of experiences. Doing slightly less work, but doing it more frequently tends to be an approach that people find success doing. The other thing that is challenging when it comes to internships is that, again, a thing that students will say when they come into my office is that they'll walk in and go, I want to do an internship, what should I do? But you need to know what your interests are. Now, you don't have to have it solidified, but if you come in with a couple of expectations of something that you would want to do, it becomes easier for you to find those experiences. Because just generally searching for internships, you're going to get literally tens of thousands, if not more, responses. You having the ability to narrow things down a little bit is going to be extremely helpful. I had a question coming through the chat. Person asked, what is a good approximate time amount that should be spent on each internship application for it to be a good application? There's no set time when it comes to something like this, especially like if there's an internship that's asking for you to write essays or something, it's obviously going to take more time. What I would say is that first internship that you apply to, that you put a lot of effort into, I wouldn't be surprised if you spent a couple hours on it, working on your resume, getting your cover letter just right, checking to see if references, doing some research about the company. When you get into a flow of doing these regularly, you'll probably be able to knock these out like, I don't know, maybe in 30 minutes or so, where you're just tweaking your resume a little bit, customizing a cover letter and sending it out. But that's when you get good, when you get into a habit of doing this with a bit of focus and you get better at doing some of that company research that you should do before you write a cover letter. So it's going to change over time. It's going to depend on the application, but expect to, if you're going to sit down and apply for internships, expect that it's going to be the thing you do that night. It's going to be something that you need to focus on. If you only get one application out that night, totally fine. Don't worry about it, but it should be high quality. So, good question. Moving past the knowing what you want being important, also recognize in that knowing what you want, so not moving past it just yet, but recognize in knowing what you want, you don't have to be definitive. You don't have to be like, this is exactly the thing I want to do. You can use internships as an opportunity to learn and explore what you might want to do. So you don't have to walk in being like, this is my destiny, this is exactly what I want to do, but you should have some ideas as to what your interests are and what might work or what you might want to explore. That's a good way to start thinking about those things. I added in this last piece. And so we're not going to go a lot into the application process itself during the course of this. We're going to be doing more of the searching aspect of it. But it's important to note that employers are not sitting here trying to sell you on them necessarily. They will, as you get through that interview process, they're going to try to explain why they're a good place to be. But you have to be your own advocate, which means as you're going through and finding these experiences, don't be afraid to, I don't want you to brag, but you need to be selling yourself. You have to be putting your best foot forward. I don't want you to sit there and be like, I'm filling out my application. The only thing I really have to talk about are class projects. And since everybody's done those, I'm not going to talk about them. No, you have to sell yourself. Maybe that means talking about skills or class projects or coursework that you've taken, but you need to be the person who's advocating for yourself. I had another question come in. When submitting an application, if it doesn't specify whether or not to add a cover letter, do you think you should still submit one with the resume? So if you see a job that doesn't ask for a cover letter, should you submit a cover letter? This is an answer where I'm going to say it depends, and you're going to hear conflicting advice from other career counselors on this. I would say if they don't ask for a cover letter, don't include one. I think following instructions is incredibly important. So if they don't specify it, then don't include one. If they say it's optional, I would absolutely include one. A cover letter is an awesome opportunity for you to sell yourself a little bit. Take advantage of that opportunity. It's going to give the other people who submit one a leg up, so you should do so as well. You can choose to submit one. You can do that as something additional. Maybe merge it with the document that your resume is on to include that supplementally, but it's kind of your call as to whether or not you want to do that. I lean on the side if they don't ask for it, don't do it. And then somebody said, can I put past high school internship experiences on the resume? Love this question. This is so good. So it's a little off topic, but it is talking about internships, and I think it's valuable. So question is, can I take internship things that I did in high school and include them on my resume? Absolutely. I did a resume workshop last week, and you can go on our website and see some of this information on here. But my big selling point with resumes is relevant experience is key. So I really don't care if something happened while you were in high school. If it's relevant, don't be afraid to put it on there. Even going into the working world, like let's say that you did something your senior year of high school, but it's extremely relevant to a job that you're applying to 5 years later post-college. 5 years ago for you is going to feel like a very long time ago. 5 years ago for an employer isn't that long. If you still remember the experience and you can still speak to it, get it on your resume. It's a good one. Great questions. I'm going to move to the next slide. So as far as timeline goes, when do people do internships? Now, more often than not, people are trying to get these in the middle of their college experience. And so when you see like really high achieving students, they tend to land them the second semester of their sophomore year or that summer after their sophomore year. That is an awesome time to land an internship experience, because if it turns out to be an experience you really liked, then the summer after your junior year, you might be able to go back to that company and move up in it and get more experience. The other side of it is if you do an experience the summer after your sophomore year and you don't like it, it opens up you up to still having an entire other summer to be able to do something else as well. Now, like I said, you can do these experiences during the course of the academic semester as well, but a lot of people tend to do them over the summer too. So this is where people tend to fall with those. It's also interesting to note that about 2 out of 3 CNS students do at least one internship experience before graduating. And a lot of times where you see degree programs that have a focus on internship experiences, their work placement rates are much higher, meaning students who get those internship experiences on average have a higher chance of landing work experiences too. It's very cool, strong recommend. We also say this at least one internship. That means there are students out there who do 2 or even 3 internships. I had one student who was doing like 7 or 8, didn't even have room on their resume for them. You don't need to do that. Getting one is going to be the thing that helps push you over the edge. The more of them that you obtain, the better off you're going to be. If you're looking for a general timeline as to when people start looking for internships, it helps to know when people typically land them. So folks who are looking for fall internships, you typically search for those during the course of your spring semester and probably land them in May. If you're looking for an internship in the spring, you're looking in the fall semester and typically landing it in November. And if you're looking for something in the summer, you're probably looking over December and January break, maybe even back in November, and landing it in February. That doesn't mean that if it hits February and you still want an internship that you can't get one. It just means a lot of the more competitive ones are filled at that point. You will absolutely still see internships being posted in March and April for the summer. And so this is, again, one of those reasons why I recommend doing the work every week and not just one lump sum once a month. You don't want to miss out on those experiences. I also land on this side that it is never too early to start looking for an internship. One of my favorite stories about working with a student is that I used to support communication majors. And I had this one student who was one of the hardest working folks that I had ever worked with. And during the course of the spring semester, we were working on getting her to apply for communications and marketing related internship experiences. And she was applying and just not getting anything. So she went home for the summer and kept on applying for jobs, hoping that she would land something during the course of the summer. And her still applying in August happened to catch an opening that was up for less than a day. She ended up working on the Jimmy Fallon show. And it was just one of those things where if she had not been continually working on it all the time and just rotating through and just keeping those applications going, she would have missed out on this experience that has since defined her career. So it's a good thing to think about. Be working on this a little bit, but frequently, all the time. If you're thinking about where to find internships, there's a lot of different places that you can do this. We talk about networking pretty frequently, and networking is an awesome way to start linking yourself into an internship experience. So a lot of these things that you're going to see are campus related. They're things like career fairs or going to campus events, maybe alumni networking events, a great chance for you to meet people who are related to your major and or people who maybe graduated from the same program and get some advice and some strategy as to what might work for them. These people aren't typically here to hand you an internship or to hand you a job, but they can be valuable resources to let you know when opportunities open up or how you can be strategic in your applications. You should also think about sharing what you're looking for with an internship with other people in your life, maybe classmates, maybe professors, maybe even your family. You never know when somebody might have a professional contact. So you should get into the habit of knowing what you want to say and how you can share that experience in a valuable way. So that way you can strike up that conversation with people. If you're looking for people who are searching for internships specifically, then a lot of times you're going to get messages about that from UMass specific resources. So I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, Handshake is a really good one of those, something that's valuable, lots of jobs and internships posted on there. We also have professors who regularly send out messages. I know I'm on one of the mailing lists for natural resource conservation. I don't know if we have any NRC majors in there, but they send out internship experiences and research experiences all the time. The thing they find is that a lot of students just tend to ignore these emails. Even if you're not directly looking for an experience, you should be checking out what people have to say when you see these things come through, because it's often going to be pretty valuable. You can also look and see where other students in your major have done internships before. So we talk about, there's a website that I'm going to share. We have a database of completed internships. I'm going to give you the link to that and then show you how to navigate that a little bit too. Career fairs are another obvious choice as far as where to look for internships. If you're a psychology major, there's going to be a career fair this April. If you're a life sciences major, there's one at the end of October every fall semester. There are constant opportunities where you can go and be engaging with employers that have this direct one-to-one relationship with how people find things. Somebody asked the question, how do we get on these mailing lists for our majors? Great question. If you are not currently on a mailing list, there's a chance your major doesn't have one, but I would start with the people who are advisors in your major. If you go onto the CNS webpage, the CNS advisor webpage, you can look up what they call CUAs, which are Chief Undergraduate Advisors. So I'm going to repeat that just for Googling reasons. CUA, Chief Undergraduate Advisor. There are a handful of advisors, one in some of the smaller majors, several in some of the bigger majors. They're the chief advisor and they can answer questions like this. They might flat out tell you they don't have a mailing list, but now you're striking up a conversation to figure out what you can do to get into the know. So fantastic question. Let's see. So I mentioned career fairs, and then we're going to go specifics into how online job search engines work as well. So we call them job search engines, but internships and jobs are fairly interchangeable. So you can find job experiences as well, or internship experience as well on job search engines. So if you're looking for specific websites, I'm going to give you a couple of places to get started. You can find all of these resources on our website. Our website is cns.umass.edu/careers. If you just Google CNS, UMass, and careers, we also show up as well. So feel free to screen cap or write down if you want, but you can find a lot of these on our website. So the database of completed internships has a link right here. Over the course of the last 7 years or so, we've been asking students who complete internships to fill out a little form that talks about their experiences. They can also choose, if they are so inclined, to put their contact info on there so other students can reach out to them and ask questions. So this website tends to be really helpful if you're in that brainstorming phase as to what you can do with your major. If you're thinking about doing something research related while you are a UMass student, the Office of Undergraduate Research and Studies is an unbelievably helpful resource. You can set up appointments with them just like you're meeting with any advisor, and they can help link you to specific programs. Biology majors, they tend to refer to BUA, which is Biology Undergraduate Assistantships. If you're somebody who's inside of environmental science, you're probably going to get referred to the mailing list that Deb Henson has, but they're really in the know as to what kind of opportunities are available for people in different majors. If you're in anything tied into life sciences, there's a program called MLSC, which is the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center. They do an internship challenge every year where what they do is they have students apply, just submit a generic resume and cover letter, and they have companies apply that are located in Massachusetts and tend to be a little bit smaller. And what they'll do is provide funding to those companies so that they can hire interns and pay them as well. So the MLSC program is a fantastic thing to look into if you haven't checked that out before, both for internships and for research reasons. And then the NSF, the National Science Foundation, also has programs like this. They use this term, which is used pretty much across the country to help you identify where research experiences might exist. So this term REU, research experiences for undergraduates, is typically what you're going to be looking for if you're searching for research experiences away from UMass. These are just a couple of the resources. The IALS program, IALS, they do what they call a summer core internship program. That's application just opened up. If you're thinking about doing something that's UMass related with some of the best research or some of the best researchers and some of the best facilities that are available, the IALS program is an amazing place to look into. I casually mentioned BUA, Biology Undergraduate Assistantships. That's another UMass program. But a lot of these are UMass specific resources that you have access to as a UMass student. So I strongly recommend checking these things out. I talked a little bit about the database. I thought it would be helpful to see what it actually looks like. So if you go to the website, you'll have an option to enter in your major and then throw in some key terms. What I normally have people do is just type in your major and then click search, and then you can search by internship year as well. Put it in reverse chronological order, and then check out some of the experiences. When you click into each one of them, you're going to get the student describing what they liked, what didn't work as well, and you can kind of go from there. Most internships are not major specific either. So hypothetically, if you were an environmental science student and you want to see some other ones, I would probably recommend that you look at sustainable food and farming or look at natural resource conservation. You can browse outside of your major to find experiences that might work for you as well. If you're in the job search phase, there are a couple of different websites that you can use in order to do this searching. Now, there's a lot, but I'm going to break them up into 3 categories. So first, we have our UMass specific resources. So that's a website like Handshake. Now, Handshake, all of these will have advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of Handshake is that any experience that you see on there was approved by a UMass employee, and any employer that went and put that experience out there was looking for UMass Amherst students specifically. So it has this advantage of being more likely to be targeted to what your interests are, but it also comes with a disadvantage. And that disadvantage is that, well, not every employer thinks to let UMass students know about their position. And so you're going to want to look and browse through some other resources as well. The next best place, well, not best place, but another place to look through, another category, is browsing what we call professional networking sites. So there are some general versions of this, like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is basically a social media site that you can use for professional reasons. You'll find job and internship experiences posted on there as well. Plus side of that is a lot of people know what a website like LinkedIn is, and they can do some of this like high level posting and really targeted ads. But the downside is that not every industry uses LinkedIn frequently. So while it is a helpful resource, it shouldn't be your end all be all. Professional networking doesn't just have to happen on LinkedIn either. Almost every academic area has what we call professional networking associations. And so if you want to look up, like, let's say you are a psychology major, you could look up something like the American Psychological Association and see if they have job boards listed as well. Usually these places will have what they call groups on LinkedIn, where you can actually go and join that group, ask questions, and see opportunities be posted as well. So don't be afraid to do some of this professional networking, especially electronically. And then the more common place that people tend to search are what we call third-party job search engines. So Indeed is one of the really popular ones, but there's literally hundreds of these out there. Monster, ZipRecruiter, Career Builder. I would recommend browsing to see which ones work for you. A website like Indeed has a lot of people post jobs on there. So while you'll find a lot of opportunities, it's probably going to be a little bit harder for you to narrow those down to the ones that are right for you. One of these resources is not better than the other. You should use all of them, and through the aggregate of what you find, apply to the positions that best work for you. If you're using a job search tool for the first time, or even if you've used them before and you have found them to be a little bit frustrating, I wanted to give you some tools that are going to make this search a little bit easier for you. So the first thing I always talk about is this concept of filtering. Now, when you use a website like Google to do job searching, typically what you do is you just throw in your key terms and you cross your fingers and you hope it works. If you have too many results, you start throwing in other keywords. Google doesn't really have a lot of filtering functions. You can throw in some stuff, but it's not as common as when you're looking at job search engines. I'm going to give you a specific walkthrough on the filter side of things, but we're going to talk about how those can work for you. You're also going to want to track your searching and your applications. If you are doing what I recommend and applying to 10 internships during the course of a week, you're going to have a lot of applications out there. Keeping a really simple Google sheet or Excel spreadsheet or something like that is going to make it so that if the fifth person that you apply to, which was 150 applications ago, reaches out to you, you can quickly pull up information about that job and make sure that you're not going to get caught sort of unaware or unknowing or something like that. You should also keep track of your searching. So as you are doing this searching, you're going to find some key terms work better than others. If you're an environmental science student and you just keep on typing in environmental science, maybe you'll get a couple of results, but maybe you also want to type in words like conversation or conservation or laboratory. When you start finding words that work for you, hold on to those terms so you don't have to rediscover them every time you go to pop into a search engine. You're also going to want to think about saving your work. So I talked about this tracking application side of it, but also if you're going to be applying for jobs, make sure you save that job description. And I'm not just talking about saving the link. Good recruiters, once they have enough applicants, will shut down a job so you won't be able to see that link anymore. You printing out your job, your webpage as a PDF, saving it as a PDF, is going to help you keep track of that information so you can refer back to it during the course of the interview process. Really, really helpful. I strongly recommend it. And then we talk about this concept of job search agents. So what this means is that you can set up search criteria to get automatically emailed to you through a lot of search websites. Handshake has this functionality, so does Indeed, so does LinkedIn. So you could set it up so once a week you get an email of things that hit your search criteria. Now, you don't want to have this be the only way you find out about jobs because this search criteria is still a limited thing to do. But you are probably going to want to keep track of or have like some additional help. So have a couple of these job search agents out there to keep you honest and keep you informed as things come up. So I mentioned I want to demonstrate a little bit how these job search engines work. This is a screen cap of Handshake. This is exactly what you would see if you'd go to the main page. And if you see up at this top left corner, it says jobs. A lot of people are like, well, jobs, I'm not looking for a job, I'm looking for an internship. But jobs and internships are counted in the same search engines often. So we're going to click on jobs. And that brings us to a very standard job search page. Now, these pages have a lot of information on them. You can see that there's a filtering option up towards the top right. We can see that there's a list of jobs on the left, and then we have descriptions that have posting dates and all of that stuff. Handshake gives us a lot of details, which is fantastic. But we have a lot to look at too. So for those of you where this is too small, this search that I had without any search criteria in it presented almost 22,000 jobs being listed. I don't know about you. I can't browse through 22,000 jobs. I don't have that kind of focus. So we want to find a way to narrow this down. And if you'll recall, I mentioned this idea that filters are really going to help us out with things like that. There's a lot of things that we can filter on. So maybe we toss in a keyword up at the top left. I did that with the word environmental, and you saw that went from 22,000 to 2,100. A reasonable number, but still kind of a lot. We can also add in search terms for location or the type of position we're looking for. We could even call it specific company names or how recently something was posted. Now, the problem is if we use all of these search filters, then we're going to narrow things down too much and we might not get anything. But using one or two of them in tandem will help get us to a more narrow search. So you'll see I go back to my job search engine. I've checked off the box that says internship up at the top of the screen. I also have a location filter closer to Boston, Massachusetts, and I have the word environmental as my keyword. And if you look back over to our job number, instead of it being 22,000, we're at 105. 105 is a number I can easily browse through within a half an hour. Find the 3 to 5 jobs I want to apply to out of there, maybe 10 jobs I want to apply to out of there, and start submitting those applications. I bring this up, I didn't have this inside of a slide, but I feel like this is a good time to mention. A lot of times what I see students doing is that they're sitting there and they're waiting for the right opportunity, or they're like working on their resume for weeks and then they go to submit for something and the job opportunity is gone. The best thing you can do is get your stuff as close to good as you think you can get it and submit those applications. If you can be dropping applications for jobs that have been posted for less than a week, so things that have only been posted for 5 or 6 days, it's going to increase the chances that your resume gets looked at by so much compared to if you're applying for a job that's been posted for 30 days already. Getting those applications in within that first 1 to 2 weeks is strongly advised, especially if you can get it within that first week. I also talked a little bit about tracking your applications. I've had folks ask me for a job tracking spreadsheet before, an internship tracking spreadsheet. You don't need one from me. I made this one off the cuff the last time I went to do this presentation. Just a couple of the key details that you think might be helpful. I actually think that this one's extra. I think it's a little too much information, but it gives you an idea that just a couple of details are going to make your life that much easier. It'll help you find jobs that you've applied to already in case you get a phone call, but you're also going to have that advantage of knowing how much work you're doing, going back in and processing like, hey, look at all of this stuff I've accomplished. So let's wrap things up a little bit by thinking about what you're going to do when you're actually submitting these applications. You're going to be putting together materials, and we've already had people ask some questions about how they're going to customize that work, but having your applications be high quality is going to be essential. So I usually talk about things from the employer perspective through these 3 lenses, these 3 questions. When they're looking at your application, they're going to ask if you meet the qualifications, if you have evidence of your skills related to this internship, and can you demonstrate your excitement about what the experience is? Can you show that off through the materials that you're supplementing? So as you're thinking about those experiences that you want to apply to, be writing your resumes and designing your cover letter to highlight those experiences. It's good to think about this as you're looking for internship experiences and choosing which ones you're going to apply to. Even in that narrow search, I got down to 105 experiences. Now, that doesn't mean that you should just apply to the 10 that pay and leave it at that. You want to find the ones that meet your expectations, the ones that you're confident that you could land, and ones that meet all of those criteria that you're looking for, and focus on those applications first. And then you can start broadening your circle out to things that maybe don't check off all those boxes. But knowing what the employer is looking for is going to be an essential part of getting your internship recognized. I love seeing this Venn diagram. I use it in almost all my presentations. But when you're going through a job search process or an application process, the recruiter is usually in your corner. The recruiter, every time they open up an application, wants to see a strong candidate. They want to see somebody who would be a good fit for their position. If you can customize your materials to match these internships you're finding, you're doing that recruiter a favor, and you're making it that much more likely that you're going to land that internship that you're looking for. So that's where I want to wrap things up right now. We have about 15 minutes left at the end here. So if folks have any questions, feel free to toss them into the chat. I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now. Does anybody have any questions? So actually, let's pause to stop the recording.